What's up everyone, it's a Knife Style here, and today I'm going to be doing my 1-year EDC update on the ZT0562 tie. And this is around a time period, or at least last year, when I first started really getting into more knives, so expect to see some more videos in this series. There's some of my favorite videos to make, so I'm excited to do one on this knife because honestly, this was my first premium knife and the knife that really introduced me into the possibility of being able to afford a Chris Reeve knife and being or willing to save up and spend the money on one. So anyway, the ZT0562 tie, just a quick rundown on what it's built up of. It's got a 20 CV blade. It's a titanium frame lock made by ZT in America. It's got a two-way reversible tip-up deep carry clip, and it's designed by Rick Hinderer. So yeah, this is a knife that I feel like it's a lot of people's first, premium knife, because maybe it's just because it was mine, but I feel like a lot of people, they want to get into Hinderers or something, but they don't want to spend the money. This is a good place to start. Now, if you think about that, I don't really like that mentality, because it's like, you'll probably get the 0562 tie and then get a Hinderer, and instead of paying $450 for a Hinderer, you pay like $600 for both of them. And so it's one of those things where yes, you can sell the 0562, but also my thought is, if you want a Hinderer, save up the money and get one, because I've learned the hard way a lot of times when it comes to that, just cheaping out for the cheaper one instead of saving up for the one that I actually want. But enough about that. Let's talk about the looks of this knife. Honestly, this is one of my favorite looking knives that I own. I just really like this monochromatic titanium look, but I also like the black hardware. I think it looks really good. The finishing on the titanium is a stonewash finish, which honestly is probably my favorite finish on titanium. The blade has a nice satin grind, or it has the satin grind lines, and even though I prefer stonewash, I think that it does look really nice and really clean. Obviously, I don't like all the words here, but that really doesn't bother me all that much. The hardware, it kind of wears pretty easy. I don't know if it was like this from the factory, but these aren't like strip screws or anything. It's just like kind of wearing around the top of the hardware. And the pocket clip, it's ZT and Kershaw, they do this weird painted clip, and it pretty much just comes off if you blow on it. Like, the paint is just not very strong. If you run into something in this clip, it like runs into it, it's definitely going to scratch it. And so it's one of those things where I don't like that. I hope that I like the Parkerized clip that Benchmade does, and then Spyderco's clip, I haven't noticed that many issues with those scratching all that bad. So I wish that ZT and Kershaw would not do these painted clips that rub off so easily. Anyway, let's talk more about the blade of this knife. So the blade, this is where we are going to have some issues, and this is a reason why I personally don't use this knife that much. Having it for a year, and I've carried it not that much for however long that I've had it. Let me get a quick thickness behind the edge measurement for you guys. There, we got it set. We are looking 33 thousandths behind the edge right there. I feel like it thins out up at the tip or closer to the belly a little bit. Okay, yeah, that thins out a lot. 24 thousandths up there. Let me get another measurement back there. Maybe I was too far back on the knife. Okay, yeah, so it's about 30 thousandths, 29 thousandths back here. And then it thins out towards the belly, and then I assume it thickens back up. Yeah, it thickens back up towards the top of the belly, nearing that tip. So it's about, I'd say throughout, it's probably about 28 or 29 thousandths behind the edge. Now, what are my thoughts about that? That is way too thick for any knife, any tool that you want to really cut with that's a knife. Or if you want to use this as a knife, that is way too thick. The stock thickness is right under 150 thousandths. So that is my biggest issue with this knife. It just doesn't cut. And that's one thing that really gets on my nerves, because I feel like a lot of people, they want their knives to be thin behind the edge, and they accept that knives are thinner behind the edge cut better. But they'll make the excuse that this knife was made for hard use to forgive the fact that it just doesn't cut well. My thought when people want a knife to be thicker behind the edge for hard use is that, what are you hard using your knives for? Personally, for me, knives are cutting tools, and so when I hard use a knife, it is a hard use cutter. Like this Spyderco Gale Bradley 2, I carry this thing all the time and use it all the time. I would consider this a hard use cutter, and the reason that I hard use it is because it's so thin behind the edge and very comfortable that I can get a lot of work done with it. Now this knife that is supposedly built for hard use, built like a tank, all that kind of stuff, yes, it might, if we torture tested both of these blades, this one would probably last longer just because it's so thick and beefy. But at the end of the day, are you using your knife for knife things, or are you using it just for cutting? It's one of those things where you'll see some kind of EDC Weird Tools, I don't know, from new companies or on Kickstarter campaigns, where they have just a bunch of different tools that they all try to implement into one thing. And what it does is it's just pretty much crappy versions of all the basic tools. Kind of like something that people say about a Leatherman, but those aren't crappy. Basically, like, the tools aren't the best tool out there. They're just the advantage of all having it in one package in your pocket at the same time. That's my thoughts about a hard use knife. Yes, it's probably the very good and will be able to take a beating, but it's not the best pry bar in the world, and it definitely isn't the best cutter in the world. And so that is my issue with these knives that are super thick behind the edge. And I think that 30 thousandths around this area is way too thick for any knife out there. And personally, that people should stop making the excuse that, oh, it's built for hard use, so it shouldn't be thinner behind the edge. My thought of a knife that's built for hard use is like 15 or 10 thousandths behind the edge, because I'm using it for hard use cutting. I'm not using it for hard use prying, scraping, breaking windows, I don't even know. But it's one of those things where, yeah, the big reason why I don't carry this knife that much is because it's just not the best cutter. And the blade shape on it, I actually do like this blade shape. Very simple, very effective, just kind of like a basic drop point blade. The slicer grind, I'm not really sure I understand the slicer grind. Personally, I mean, I've heard people talk about it. I don't know if this is right or not, but I've heard people say that the advantage of a slicer grind is that it's the same thickness behind the edge all the way throughout. Now, my thoughts about that is, doesn't it seem like, and I just measured it, it's going to be thinner here at the belly because the grind height is taller, thicker here at the base, and thicker at the tip. And we measure 29 thousandths, like 25 thousandths, and then back up to like 30 thousandths up there. So it's one of those things where I don't really see the advantage of a slicer grind. Not that it's bad, it's just kind of like a flat grind. And personally, I don't really think the slicer grind should get any more recognition or appreciation than a flat grind should. I guess that's basically what I'm saying. So I'm going to stop talking about the blade now. Oh, actually, one more thing. 20 CV, how has this held up? How has the heat treat been? It's actually surprised me and how it sharpens. It deburrs pretty good. It really forms a pretty crisp apex. It sharpens better than my 204P Microtech LEDT and my 20 CV Hogue Deca, so I guess that's saying something. This is, I guess, out of all the 20 CV knives I own, which I think those are, that and the Hogue Ritter, this one sharpens up the best out of them, excluding the fact that it is very thick behind the edge. Because keep in mind, this bevel right here looks very wide on this. This is probably like a 20 or 21 degree bevel on here, as you can see this. And let me show my Gale Bradley 2, which is, I think, a 15 degree bevel. And look how thin that is. Now, these are kind of two extremes with thickness behind the edge measurements, but you see that this one is just a better cutter any day of the week. Also, this plunge grind ZT did not do a very good job with it. As you can see, I have sharpened in a smile there because I barely lowered the angle from the factory. And personally, would I like that to be better? Yes. A bunch of people are probably like, well, you always complain about plunge grinds, might as well fix them and get some files. Turns out I did. And just a quick PSA, you should not get needle diamond files off eBay for under $10 because they are not good at all. So I am going to get new files now because I pretty much just wasted like $7 or $8 on them. And yeah, they're just not very good. But anyway, enough about that. On to the fit and finish and lockup. So lockup on ZTs, it's always been a big controversy. A couple of years ago, they had many issues with lock failure. And this one, the lockup is very well done, and you aren't going to fail this. Here's a roll of tape. You're not going to fail this knife. I don't really think you're going to have any issues with that. Now, there is some lock slip to it. As you can see here, look at that lockup right there. It has moved over a bit, and you can hear some lock stick right there. So there is a tiny bit of lock slip. So this is not the best frame lock that has ever been produced in the world, but it's not horrible. It's not going to fail on you. It probably just has weaker lock bar pressure, and that's why I could push the lock bar over. And that is how you get this really nice, smooth drop shut action, which is kind of, I did a dedicated video on this, basically like knives with drop shut actions. A lot of times they're not achieved with these amazing tolerances and great machining. It's achieved with loose lock bar pressure, you know, undersized pivots and heavy blades. So this is the thing that doesn't really impress me all that much, and I don't think a drop shut action should impress you. Anyway, let's talk more about the fit and finish, I guess. For the blade play, there is no blade play. One thing I like about the ZT is that it has these external stops here, and even though, do I need them for prying? Or because what they do is they basically make it be able to withstand prying a little bit better. And this blade stock right here, how it thickens up, this knife is definitely one that you could pry with, and it's one of those things where I don't need it. But one thing I do like about external stops is a lot of times you don't run the issue with blade play, and you can get a smoother action, because this does feel like it should have some wiggle to it in the blade. And I have tried, this is off-centered, I have tried to center it up, but there is a little bit of blade play whenever I center that blade up. So it's one of those things where it's the external blade stops aren't that good when it comes to fixing a little bit of blade play. But overall, yes, the action is pretty smooth. I haven't talked about that yet. I'll talk about that in a little bit. But the fin finish on this isn't horrible. You know, it is a $280 knife, and if you spend that money and get one that's slightly off-center, that might be kind of annoying, especially because, you know, there's always that person that's going to be in the comment section saying, oh, I can get a $40 Civivi that's perfectly centered, yada, yada, yada. We've all heard that one before. But anyway, on to the next category, which is the ergos, and the ergonomics are very comfortable on this. And they are comfortable, but I do have one drawback to them. So where they are comfortable, in this saber grip, it's very good, and this jimping is actually exactly where your thumb lands. Now, where it's bad is you see this jimping is where your thumb lands. That's because my hand is kind of like tilted back on this knife, as you can see. And if I do a hammer grip, it's still kind of tilted back. And I do a hammer grip a lot. And with this knife, just the way that the ergonomic lines are angled, I hope you can see that. Maybe it's just this flare back here that causes it. You can't really comfortably choke up. It's probably a mix of this flare in the back with the flipper tab being tilted like that. It's kind of hard to choke up like this and really get a good hammer grip on it. You kind of get a hot spot on your pinky and from that pocket clip. And I really wish that you could do kind of a more straight up and down perpendicular grip like this on this knife, because you get a lot more power when you do a hammer grip like that. For example, the Spyderco Mannix, I really like this because you can get a straight up and down grip and really do good push cuts like that and like this. And it's almost like this knife, you're in a constant saber grip where your hand is tilted back and you can't really get your hand straight and do some more powerful cuts with it. But I still do like the ergonomics. They're very comfortable on this. And I actually like that the jimping is right where your thumb needs it. And this jimping is pretty well done. I mean, it's not going to tear up your thumb, but it does provide you some pretty good grip. I could take it or leave it when it comes to jimping. I really don't care about it. I would honestly like it if knives didn't have any jimping on it, because I don't feel like they need them if they have good ergonomic lines. But it's one of those things where it is pretty well placed on this knife. And so for the next category, the carry of this knife, the carry is pretty good. I mean, it's got this deep carry pocket clip, which for this big, heavier knife, I would probably like to see a non-deep carry clip. I know that might make a lot of people mad because they might be like, well, why don't you just want a deep carry clip? I think it's easier to grab onto out of the pocket, and so I like that a little bit better. And this is a bigger knife, so if you pull it out with this deep carry clip like this, then you're kind of like this. You gotta scoot way up the blade to open it, but you could always reach into your pocket more and then grab it more like this. So anyway, the carry on this is fine. I do like that they did this kind of pocket clip, even though, you know, the hardcore Chinese knife collector might not like it because it's not a titanium milled clip. But usually every single one of those has a problem with it, either with retention or usually not ergonomics, but I feel like it's always a hit or miss with those clips. So I do like this clip more than the titanium milled clips that it feels like ZT might do, which I don't really think they do that much. My main complaints about the clip is it doesn't give you enough to grab onto, obviously because it's deep carry. There's advantages and disadvantages with that. Once again, I've said this before, I'll say it again. I don't really understand the deep carry clip craze because I'm not some super stealthy operator trying to conceal my knife. People who know me know I carry knives, and I don't really think anyone's gonna freak out if they see the butt end of a knife sticking out of my pocket. And a lot of times my clothes cover the top of that anyway, so it's one of those things that I don't really understand. And also, this knife is a little bit heavier, so I don't carry this in shorts or sweatpants really that much. Usually I'm wearing jeans when I carry this knife. So if you do like to wear a lot of athletic shorts, you probably already know that this knife is going to be way too heavy and overbuilt for you, but I have no issues carrying it in jeans. So for the next category, the action of this knife. This is a knife that kind of made me stop caring about drop shed actions, and that might confuse you because truthfully, the action on this is really good. And now that I have this knife, I don't really care, because if I'm going to play with my knives, which I honestly haven't done it that much recently, I'll just grab this one and play with it. A lot of people want every single knife they have to be a bally song pretty much, and I don't need that. So this knife has a good action. If you will appreciate it, I feel like this is a knife that this is kind of ZT's expertise. They make great knives to just sit and look at and appreciate, and not so great knives to actually use. I feel like that's where they can really improve their grinds, their edge geometry, their heat treats, and their lock bar, just their locks in general. So anyway, the action on this is very good. The flipper tab, a bunch of people complain about the hinder flipper tab, how it goes up like this. This isn't a problem on this knife. It is nicely knocked down. Hopefully that will focus. It's nicely knocked down up there to the point where you can put your finger right on there, push in, and you don't have any discomfort at all. I usually do a light switch like this when I'm opening, and it's a very, very loud action. Like, it's probably kind of hard to hear me because this thing is just like a huge thwack when opening and closing the noise. I think it's kind of silly to talk about the noise of a knife, but it's also kind of loud doing that. So my main issue, if I had a complaint with this action, is I don't like flippers that much, and I've kind of realized that over the course of this last year. And the reason why, I don't really know. It's one little reason, but this reason is going to make me sound like I'm sort of hardcore mall ninja that needs to have my knife in my hand immediately, but that's not really the case. What I don't like about flippers is they just don't feel as natural as a thumb stud or as a thumb hole. So let's say you get a flipper, you pull it out of your pocket like this, and you're ready to flip. The good thing about it is you don't really have to scoot up the knife to use it. You can just stretch your finger out. So let's say you stretch your finger out, you flip it, and then your hand is like this holding the knife. Now, you can't really do anything like this except maybe open a box very lightly. Still not a very good grip. And so let's say you need to get into a more comfortable and usable grip with this knife. You got to scoot up the blade, get your finger on there, and then get your thumb on the back. A couple steps in order to do it. And while it's not that big of a deal, it just doesn't feel as natural when you go to use your knife. You know, you take it out of your pocket, flip it open, and then you gotta shift your whole hand around a couple times. While with a thumb hole or a thumb stud, you just kind of roll it out. Your thumb's there, your fingers are there. Just move it once, you're ready to go. You can also do the same with the flick. Thumb's there, fingers there, move it once, you're ready to go. Let me pull out a thumb stud to show you guys. Just right here, go up, you're ready to go. Same with a thumb flick on the thumb stud. Go up, you're right there, ready to cut. So it's not really that big of a deal to me. It's just that flippers feel unnatural, and I feel like it's a thing that I've noticed a lot of times going around in the knife community, that people are kind of turning against flippers, and I'm all for that, because I hope that these companies listen and realize that nobody wants the same knife over and over. And that's the thing why I don't buy that many Chinese knives, because other than Riot, I feel like all Chinese knives seem the same and look the same and feel the same. And it's one of those things where I know someone's going to argue, oh yeah, there's this one guy making these cool knives, you should check them out. I get that. Riot, the reason I said except Riot is because a lot of custom makers collab with them, and so they are different and unique. And those are really the only Chinese knives I'm tempted to buy, like that Urban EDC Supply Vox collab, that everything from Brian Nadeau, and some more. What are some more? Liang Ma kind of stuff. That's but also Pena. Oh yeah, Pena stuff. That is the stuff. Oh, and Chavez. How could I forget about that? Those are the knives made from China that I actually am very interested in, because they are unique, but I feel like companies like We, Best Tech, Civivi, CJRB, it just all kind of seems, it blends together and it seems like the same thing. Anyway, that's enough talk about the action, except one more thing. A bunch of people are curious about these thumb studs. How do they feel? They are not very, I wouldn't even say they're usable for me. I have gotten used to it and I have lightened the detent up, and I feel like my thumb over the course of years has built up from opening so many knives. But yeah, it is a pretty, I can use it, but it is not comfortable at all. After a couple flicks, it hurts, and the detent on mine must be just a little bit lighter, because I've heard that, you know, some people can, some people can't, and it's all kind of based on the strength of the detent. A softer detent will be easier to open, just because you're not going to have to overcome as much force onto that thumb stud to flick it out. So don't buy this knife going into it thinking that it's going to be able to do a thumb stud flick. And originally when I got this, I tried to flick it once, I failed, and then I was like, oh yeah, thumb studs aren't usable, and I didn't do it for like another month, and I just tried it and it worked. So for the last category, the value of this knife, $280. What are my thoughts about that? Personally, made in the USA, which is a little bit iffy when it comes to ZT, because we saw that during the whole pandemic times, I guess. I don't want to say it because I don't know what YouTube's things are about demonetization and stuff like that. But during the whole pandemic times, ZT stopped offering their warranty, which is kind of like, it makes you think, oh yeah, probably just low on jobs and stuff. But the thing was, a lot of companies in America, I don't really know what the situation is. Are they made in Oregon, I believe? I don't know. I don't know what the situation is, but a lot of companies were back up manufacturing things, while over in China, it wasn't allowed to get things to ship here. And so what that made a lot of people believe is that, you know, a lot of pocket clips, maybe screws, stuff are made in China. I assume that the titanium, and obviously this is 20 CV made by Crucible in America, I believe that they're all that they're all assembled and the bigger parts are made in America. But I would go as far to guess that they aren't 100% made in the USA. So that is a little bit of a complaint, because, I mean, I'd be fine if it says assembled in the USA. I'd be fine if it said 90% made in the USA. But honestly, that makes you think, oh, are they lying to us a little bit? And then it makes you think more like, what else could they be lying about? So I don't know. That's just something, I guess, some food for thought. Anyway, more on the value. Full titanium frame lock, 20 CV blade. I mean, 2 years ago, yes, this is amazing value. Go buy it right now. Right now, it's got some pretty steep competition with We, Civivi, Riot, and don't get me started on Tucson. But I think that it's worth it. I think that if it is 100% made in the USA, which I think most of it is made in the USA, I think that's a good price. But personally, I would not buy a knife in this price range like this knife again, just because it's closer to $450 than you think, and that $450 price mark is a Sebenza, Umanzon, and Kosi, Hinder, those kind of things. And so personally for me, I don't really buy knives in this range anymore, because I know that, oh, $150 more, $100 more, I can get a Chris Reeve, I can get a Hinderer. So for that reasons, I wouldn't buy this knife again. But I would suggest it as kind of a first premium knife. I think that it really did a lot for me getting more into the knife world. But also, it's got that issue with the blade hardly being able to cut. So if you know yourself, if you know you're like, yeah, I'm probably not going to use my knife that much, this honestly would be a good knife for someone who doesn't use their knives. And I'm not trying to be mean when I say that, because a bunch of people come down hard on people who don't use their knives, when truthfully it's like, I mean, what if you live in an apartment, work an office job, you don't have anything to cut at work, you don't have yards to work on or anything. So it's like, what do? Just cut Amazon packages, which is what a lot of people do. And I can't blame you for that, because what are you going to do? Work a blue-collar job to be able to use your knives more? I don't know. But anyway, that's going to do it for the video. I kept rambling on. For the value, is it worth it? Is it not? I think it's worth it. There are some better options if you're fine with buying Chinese knives. But if you want to go USA made, I think that this is a good value. But that's going to do it for the video. Thank you guys for watching. Don't forget to like this video and subscribe if you're new. And I'll see you guys in the next one.